Hi, everyone. Before we get started, a little history and some acknowledgments. What you're about to hear is Swordborne the Savage, Chapter 10. This is the 10th and final installment in a series that I initially began writing when I was asked to go on a podcast called Fantasy Fiction, created by Dominic Muschietti and Josh Henderson. I subsequently went on to guest on this show a number of times, as well as on another show called Tales from the Tavern. And every time I went on, I would continue this exact same story until we get to a 10 part story, with this being the finale. I want to thank Josh and Dom for even having me on their show in the first place. I was a fan of their show. I was friends with Dom. He asked me if I wanted to come on, and it allowed me to write this saga, which I would probably never have otherwise. And that would have been terrible, because this is one of my favorite things I've ever written. I love the characters, and I'm so proud of it. I also want to thank anybody on Twitter who has been gently pushing me for like years to finally finish up the story. Nobody ever got mean. Everybody was always super polite about it and supportive. And so I'm really happy that I'm finally getting off my ass and recording this so that you guys can finally hear how the series wraps up. All right. Let's get into it. Without further ado, please enjoy Swordborne the Savage, Chapter 10. Swordborne the Savage, Endgame, a.k.a. The Nun 2, Black in the Habit, a.k.a. Yes, Yes, Y'all. Now I'm going to pause down here for a second. This will give you a sense of how long ago I wrote this. I wrote this before there was an Avengers Endgame, and I also wrote this at a time when The Nun was relevant. Okay, there you go. Far beyond Orkspire and Daranos, right near the Coraleth death mines, which are actually a really great place to grab coffee, by the way, slightly east of Weird Linda's apartment of fun stuff, which isn't fun at all, but is instead filled with newspaper clippings about unsolved murders where a woman killed people in her apartment, lies the kingdom of Stone's Realm. We last left our story 25 years ago. Not in the story, mind you, but in real life. Did you know it's been that long? I have a gray beard now. Both my kids have families and lives of their own, and they never call me. Oh well, at least I've got this imaginary world I created. When we last left Swordborne and his band of adventurers, they were attacked by Gorn, a super being created by Moraban II, comprised of 6 of Stone Realm's most powerful warriors. In the heat of this epic battle, it was revealed to Swordborne that he is, in fact, not only a badass warrior, but also a badass wizard, brimming with newfound magical confidence, not unlike Doctor Strange after he graduates wizard school or wherever the fuck he learned to make cool light shows with his hands. Swordborne viciously dispatches of Gorn and releases the 6 original component warriors from what must have been a really weird roommate-style situation inside of Gorn. Using magic, Swordborne turned back the clock on the 6 warriors, returning them to childhood for a second chance at a life worth living. Of course, they're now 6 kids with no money, jobs, or guardians living in one of the most dangerous and inhospitable lands ever, but you know what? Best not dwell on it too much. Let's just say they're doing great, and let's that be what we go with. We're going to go with that. With magic, might, momentum, and all of the other M words on their side, Swordborne, along with his questmates Kenjin Falconer, her trained bird of prey Screambird, and of course Swordborne's spectral polar bear mount Ghost Bitch, have finally arrived at the gates of Fortress Moraban. Real quick, 25 years, dudes. 25 years since the last recording of Tales from the Tavern. Man, really makes you think. Swordborne and his party stand before the large, imposing gates of the Fortress of Moraban. It looks bigger now, somehow, said Kenjin. I'm not sure how that's possible, but I don't remember it having so many rooms, let alone so many rooms with party lights on, even though there's clearly no party going on here. Are we sure this is the right fortress? It says 6969 Moraban Avenue on the gate, said Swordborne. I don't know, this should be it. Suddenly, the worst cover of Bohemian Rhapsody anyone has ever played begins blasting from deep within the castle. Yeah, this is it. Swordborne drew the Sword of Ages and, holding it aloft, bellowed a simple magical incantation. Inside! He waited, but nothing happened. Enter! Yelled the warrior wizard. Let's try. It's open, says Kenjin as she pushes the large iron gate. I mean, of course it is. It's like someone leaving their dorm room open. Like people are just gonna go, ooh, an open door. I think I'll visit, as if I've got nothing better to do. And then the person inside is like, well, that was my only idea to make friends here at school, so guess I'll give up. I don't know what a dorm room is, replied Swordborne, but that stuff you just said felt really specific, like, to you. No judgment, but we're all here to talk whenever, or, maybe you should talk to, like, a brain wizard, feelings wizard, or something. Can we just do this, please? Swordborne and the team crept towards the drawbridge of the fortress. Suddenly, the moat in front of the party exploded into an inferno of white fire as the Flow Rider song, My House, began blasting from all around. Above the warriors, the face of Moraban II appeared. Wow, you guys made it, sneered the evil sorcerer. That sucks. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm always down to clown. Swordborne leaned over and whispered to Kenjin. What does down to clown mean? I have no idea, said Kenjin, but I'm like 99% sure it's sexual, and that is so gross. I know why you're here, Swordborne the Savage. You wish to vanquish me, reclaim the spirit stones, and totally kill the power boner I've got going on here. Well, guess what? What? It's not going to happen. What? It's not going to happen. What? Don't do this to me, said Moraban, suddenly very frustrated. Please, I hate that. I hate whatting. It's for dumb people. I heard you can tell how intelligent or stupid a town is by how quickly they what someone cutting a live promo for the World Warrior Federation, Kenjin added. It's the worst, right? Agreed Moraban. You really know a crowd has nothing to say when they dip into that well. It's like, why did you even get a ticket? Just, be better. Be better. Enough talk, bellowed Swordborne. We're coming in there to hand you your ass with your dick and balls in it and take the spirit stones. If you're so intent on coming in and testing my power, then be my guest. You will never leave this place alive. Also, please take off your shoes. I know it's dumb, but I'm a real weirdo about clean floors. With that, the giant head of Moraban disappeared. Then, one by one, Swordborne, Ghost Bitch, Kenjin, and Screambird each disappeared in a flash of green light. In the blink of an eye, Swordborne had found himself transported inside of the fortress. Surveying his surroundings, he found himself inside a darkened room, covered in what appeared to be wall-to-wall doors. The voice of Moraban II rang out through the room. Welcome to my fortress, Swordborne. I've taken the liberty of separating you and your cohorts because I'm a dick and I'm not stupid. Each door you see leads to a room within this magic castle, and each one of those rooms is a trap wrapped in a puzzle wrapped in dopeness because I'm dope as shit and I live a dope life. Only one of them, however, leads to me. Swordborne was in no mood to fuck around. Face me right now, and I promise when this is all said and done, I'll tell people you are a passable combatant and not the loser nerd you actually are. Then you're going to have to decide whether you want to tangle ass with me or release your friends from the kick-ass magical traps I'm currently holding them in. I choose both. I choose your mom. She doesn't choose you back, bellowed Swordborne. Oh, it doesn't matter because you're about to get creep-jacked, my man. I've got an awesome surprise lined up just for you. Ribs? Asked Swordborne. No. Why would I do that? Moraban replied incredulously. To be cool, to be a bro. Don't try to manipulate me, laughed Moraban. I'm already tight bros with a lot of cool-ass dudes. Like who? Asked Swordborne. For a long time there was no answer. All Swordborne could hear were papers shuffling. What are you doing? Are you going through your address book looking for names? You know what? Yelled Moraban. I was considering changing things up and doing the ribs thing for you, but I'm going back to my original plan, the randos. A collection of monsters appeared around Swordborne. There was no rhyme or reason to any of them. They were truly randos. There was a werewolf, a minotaur, a skeleton warrior, a large buff cat creature, etc., etc., etc. Meet the Rando, Swordborne, a random collection of creatures I've been conjuring in my spare time, and I've amassed quite a few. Swordborne stared into the monster mob. There were ghouls aplenty, a gator goon, even something that looked like a monster made of dicks. Then Swordborne noticed a creature we haven't mentioned in a bit, but you knew he was coming. Is that a goddamn Freddy, you sick bastard? You know it, homie! Best of luck, you loser-ass loser! Moraban cackled as his voice faded from the chamber. As the creatures closed in around Swordborne, he went full-blown loco on their asses. The warrior not only chopped and sliced his way through the assembled creatures, he also shouted spells as he did it. Firestorm, Ice Blast, Leaf Shield. He'd never used these spells, but in the moment they were simply coming to him. Magical knowledge seemed to be flowing through the Sword of Ages right into his body and mind. I feel jacked as shit, the crazed warrior yelled. Multiply! Suddenly, Swordborne was multiplied by 10. What happened next can only be described as a magical violence tornado. The sound in the room was a cacophonous blend of spells, monster screams, and chopping. Good Lord, the chopping! Listen, I'm no monster fan, but that disturbing song of pain will echo in my ears forever. When the dust settled, 10 Swordborne stood victorious, breathing heavily and covered in monster guts. One of them dismissively tossed the Freddy razor glove to the ground. There goes Freddy, Swordborne said with confidence, thus paying off the Freddy graffiti Swordborne encountered way back in Story 1 when he was still Rindle. Swordborne addressed his doppelgangers. You over there, take that door. You, go in that door, and you, go through that door there. I'll join up with you guys once we've retrieved Kenshin, Ghostbitch, and Screambird. I've got something I need to do. Let's go. 4 of the Swordborns ran from the room. The remaining 6 remained behind, staring at each other in silence, then sort of looking around like, I don't know, what now? Original Swordborne suddenly ran back in. I'm so sorry, you guys. You all did great. Thank you. I think we're all set, so you guys are good to go. Thanks. Swordborne Copy 1 ran down a long hall into a large room that looked like a museum. On a table next to the door, he found a pile of maps showing everything that was in the room. This was a museum. He noticed a banner hanging from the ceiling. Hall of Amazeballs. Oh my God, said Swordborne, exasperated by the use of the word amazeballs. At the end of the hall, Swordborne spied a familiar form. It was Kenshin standing frozen, transfixed by something in one of the display cases. Swordborne ran to his compatriot. Kenshin, I found you. We've got to... Look at this thing. It's amazeballs, said Kenshin, staring into a large display window. Swordborne turned and looked. Inside the display window were cakes. Not like 2 or 3 or 10 cakes. This was an incalculable amount of cakes floating together through a starscape in even lines as if on conveyor belts. It's all cakes, said Kenshin with wonder. Swordborne looked on the map, and sure enough, that's exactly what this was. All the cakes. As he stood there, Swordborne could feel his mind's eye being pulled back to those cakes. No, said Swordborne, this is wrong. These are all wrong. The cakes, that display over there with the breakdancing animals, the window where people from your past come forward and validate the person you are now, the horse with 2 dongs, it's all meant to keep us here forever. Swordborne realized he had to protect himself from getting sucked in too. Pointing the Sword of Ages at his own eyes, he enchanted himself. Unsee! With that, dark eye shields descended from the heavens and landed on the bridge of Swordborne's nose right in front of his eyes. I'm not going to say they looked exactly like sunglasses, but you get it. Swordborne tried to turn Kenshin to face him, but it was impossible. Kenshin, this isn't real. You have to snap out of it. This is just... Wow, that really is all of them, all the cakes. Swordborne tried unsuccessfully to use Unsee on Kenjin, but the display's hold over her was too powerful. He knew what he had to do. He had to somehow change the magic. I gotta hack this thing. Swordborne concentrated. He pointed the Sword of Ages at the cakes. He summoned every ounce of magical power he could muster. Hack! With that, Swordborne leapt unceremoniously into the display and simply began hacking the shit out of it with his sword. Aw, man, whined a disappointed Kenjin. No, the cakes, man. Aw, man. Frosting and cake of every type went flying everywhere, and once Swordborne was done, all the cakes were gone. Instead, there was just a big mess. It was more confusing than interesting. With the spell broken, Swordborne grabbed Kenjin's hand and pulled her towards the door. Did you see the horse with two dongs? Asked Kenjin. Yeah, it was crazy. That one almost got me, actually, Swordborne replied as the two warriors exited the room. Swordborne Copy 2 entered a small, dark room. The walls felt strange, rough but soft at the same time. As Swordborne neared the center of the room, 4 strange torches blazed to life, filling the space with an eerie light. It wasn't quite light, but it wasn't quite dark. Some might even say it was almost black light. As the black light torches blazed, they illuminated the pictures on the walls. One of the pictures was a glowing portrait of Morban. It suddenly came to life and addressed Swordborne. Well, hello there. Welcome to my art room. It's filled with the best art you can find in Stone's Realm. These are like the best paintings. I really know what's good in art stuff. First of all, these paintings were posters. Second, most of them were of topless female centaurs. But there were other things depicted. For instance, Gorn was in there. There was even one of Jack Pumpkinman. Remember him? From the very first Swordborne Halloween special 60 years ago? One particular image caught Swordborne's eye. At the far end of the room was a picture of a spectral polar bear mount fighting a mountain troll. It was Ghost Bitch. She was trapped in one of Morban's blacklight posters. Swordborne knew what he had to do. Taking a running start from the other end of the room, Swordborne hurtled his massive body at the poster. He hit a solid rock wall and nothing else happened. When Swordborne woke up, he got to his feet and dusted himself off. He adjusted his back, then held the Sword of Ages aloft and mumbled, "Enter." Without warning, the warrior was pulled into the poster. There was no time to get acclimated. Cold air blasted Swordborne's face. He found himself on a snowy ridge in the thick of a battle. Noticing Swordborne, the troll bellowed and swung at the mighty one with a gigantic warhammer. Ghost Bitch roared and charged the giant troll again and again. The creature grabbed her each time and tossed her aside like a ragdoll. P.S. Why do ragdolls get tossed around so much? You never hear of someone getting hugged like a ragdoll or snuggled like one. Why? It's weird. Swordborne leapt onto Ghost Bitch's back as she once again charged the troll. This time, Swordborne let fly with crazy spells. Shark Blast, Big Rock Attack, Soar Nuts! The troll roared but quickly recovered. Behind the troll, Swordborne noticed a cave. He could see the faint glow of the black lights emanating from inside. There, shouted Swordborne. That's the way out. Ghost Bitch broke for the cave, but no matter where she went, she couldn't avoid the troll. Swinging its hammer down against the ground, the troll sent a shockwave across the snow and opened a huge chasm under Swordborne and Ghost Bitch. Circus flip, said Swordborne, causing he and Ghost Bitch to flip over the chasm. It looked super circusy, but it worked. We need a distraction, and I've got just the guy. Raising his sword in the air, Swordborne declared, Super Summon! Gear Fist! With that, a portal opened, and into the poster stepped clockwork fighting and pranking machine Gear Fist. Swordborne, you have my fists! Exclaimed Gear Fist, still armed with the gauntlets of Raulo, magic gauntlets given to him in the Nether Zone that allow the user to conjure any form of melee weapon. Gear Fist wasted no time lacing into that mountain troll. He first pulled down the troll's weird troll jorts because you know he has to prank. Then he let loose a series of blows using 2 cartoonish mallets conjured from the gauntlets. Go, Swordborne! This creature will meet his demise via these mechanical hands, which will also do this to him. Gearfist ran and slid between the troll's legs, looking up and making a PU face. Good one? Said Swordborne, unsure. He and Ghost Bitch broke for the cave as they entered it. They found themselves transported back outside into Moraband 2's art room. Swordborne grabbed the poster off the wall, rolled it up, and put it in Ghost Bitch's saddlebag. Let's ride, he yelled. Ghost Bitch crashed through the door and away from the art room. Back in the poster, Gearfist dealt one last blow to the troll and sent it hurtling off a cliff. He was just about out of wind now. Well, said the metal man, I'm undefeated in Stone's realm, undefeated in the Nether Zone, and undefeated here in this wherever I am. I've had a good life. Gearfist sat down on a stump and turned his gaze towards the mountains ahead. Beautiful, he said as his whine ran down to its end. Suddenly, another portal opened up next to him. Out of it stepped a woman in Victorian clothing, wielding a crossbow with some sort of glowing amulet around her neck. My name is Professor Victoria von Plume. I'm a monster hunter and interdimensional traveler dedicated to defending the multiverse from evil. You're going to come with me now and go on adventures in another series. She quickly wound Gearfist. Come along. Gearfist stood up from the stump and turned to address you, the listener. Here I go again. Swordborne Copy 3 entered a brightly lit patio. Sun shone in through the windows despite the fact that it was night outside. The room was filled with bird cages, identical bird cages. Suddenly there was a rustling of black feathers as a large raven came out of nowhere and perched in front of Swordborne. Hey, the raven said as he rather cheerfully greeted Swordborne. My name's Crobrax. I run Moraband's aviary. As you guys can see, each of these cages contains identical birds. One of them's your compatriot Screambird, the hero bird that saved your life many times. Who told you that? She did? Anyway, you have one chance to choose the right cage or Screambird will. Swordborne didn't let Crobrax continue. He cut him off by whistling the first few bars of a song he knew Screambird would know. Only one bird answered. The right stuff. That's her. Swordborne unlocked the cage and freed Screambird. Thanks, said Swordborne. Screambird screeched several times, subtitled, Thank you, Crobrax, for your kindness. You made a hard situation bearable. Good luck with your wife. I know relationships are hard sometimes. They're work, but you guys will figure it out. She's great and you're great together. I'll never forget you two. Oh, and tell Rodrigo I said next time the waffles are on him. Okay, bye. With that, Screambird and Swordborne exited Moraband's aviary. Moraband stood in the center of his throne room. Above him, the ceiling was open, revealing the largest full moon, I'm pretty sure, ever. If I ever saw a moon that big in real life, I would probably, lose my fucking mind. It was big. A vortex of energy swirled above Moraband's head. Suddenly, the doors to the room were kicked in, exploding into 1,000 pieces, and through it stepped Swordborne. His doppelgangers, Kenjin, Ghostbitch, and Screambird. Swordborne's doppelgangers faded from view as the warrior released the multiply spell. Time for us to do that thing I said earlier about us handing you your ass with your dick and balls in it, Moraband. What? Responded Moraband obnoxiously. No one responded. What? Still nothing. Oh, you're not gonna let me do it? Fine, whatever, taintsters. It doesn't matter now anyway. You're too late. The full moon of Serapor is here, and in a matter of moments, it will imbue the spirit stones seen here embedded in my awesome belt with its powerful moon magic. Then, unfortunately for you pole gropers, I will be a god, and nothing will stand in my way. That's fine, we'll wait, said Swordborne casually. I'm sorry, scoffed Moraband. You'll wait? Yep, we'll wait. Until I become a god? Yes, sir. Moraband stood confused for a moment, not sure how to proceed. Okay, I'll just do it then. Moraband raised his hands to the sky and quietly began his incantation, but it was awkward. I don't want to do this in front of people who are just watching. Wait, Kenjin said. Are you piss shy for this spell right now? No, lied Moraband. Of course not. Just turn around. Swordborne and his team did as Morban requested. From behind them, they could hear him quietly going through his incantation. For a moment, nothing happened, when all of a sudden, the room exploded in the glow of moon energy as the moon of Serapor projected its magic directly into the spirit stones. The stones began to glow wildly and the room shook, but then, nothing. Everything stopped. Swordborne and the group turned around. It was unclear whether the spell had worked. "How you feeling there, guy?" asked Kenjin. The room began to quake as Morban looked up at the brave warriors with new eyes, the eyes of a god. "I've done it! I am a god!" With that, Morban suddenly grew 1,000 times in size. He towered over Swordborne, yet still the warrior maintained his stance. "Congrats, you must feel pretty great. This is your big moment, which is going to make this so much sweeter." While Swordborne's 3 doppelgangers had released his friends, Swordborne went on a mission of his own. A mission to do something he knew he needed to do since he first saw Morban II in the vision of Torgus the Geomancer. Swordborne held his hand to the sky, only this time he wasn't holding the Sword of Ages. He was holding Morban's stupid guitar. "Wait!" shouted Godfor Morban. "No!" Swordborne wrapped his other hand around the neck of the guitar and smashed that shit to smithereens. Over and over, the guitar hit the ground until it was completely destroyed. "No!" screamed Morban, and as he did, a red beam of energy exploded from his mouth directly at Swordborne. Kenjin and Screambird took cover as Ghost Bitch bounded in at top speed. Swordborne jumped onto her back. Morban released beam after beam at Swordborne as his faithful mount tore around the throne room, avoiding each blast. Swordborne suddenly did a killer flip off Ghost Bitch's back and landed Iron Man style in front of his team. He raised the Sword of Ages and shouted, "Time out!" Unbelievably, this really shot-in-the-dark attempt at a spell worked, momentarily freezing Morban in time. Swordborne addressed his nemesis. "Morban, a wise man and really solid dude, once told me 2 things. 1, always carry gum. And 2, Swordborne looked at the Sword of Ages. This thing kills gods." "Go fuck yourself!" bellowed Morban. "No!" replied Swordborne. "Headshot!" Swordborne leaped from the ground and became a human projectile, flying toward Morban with the Sword of Ages outstretched. Another beam of evil energy issued from Morban's mouth as he shook off the effects of being put in timeout. The powerful blast engulfed Swordborne, but it wasn't enough to stop the warrior's momentum, however. Swordborne went in through Morban's mouth and out through the top of his head. Moon energy began shooting from the hole in the evil god's head. His powers were escaping, never to return. Morban began to shrink back to normal size, shrieking in agony and anger as he did. This was a fatal blow, and as he reached his original human size, Morban had one last thing to say before he turned black as ash and crumbled. "I did it all for the Nookie." With that, a soft night breeze turned the sorcerer to dust and sent him on to oblivion. He died as he lived. A poser. Kenjin searched the rubble of Morban's throne room for Swordborne. Ghost Bitch was the first to find him. He'd been thrown clear from Morban after exiting. His head, and ironically, landed in a seated position directly on Morban's throne. He looked regal. He was victorious, but he was not well. Kenjin ran up to Swordborne. "Are you okay?" she asked hopefully. Swordborne looked down at his legs, which were slowly but surely turning to stone, along with the rest of his body. "That fucking asshole turned me to stone. What a dick. Although, actually, now that I think about it, it's probably the coolest thing he ever tried to do. You guys want some gum?" Swordborne slowly opened his hand, revealing a pack of Ice Vikings gum. Glacier chill flavor. I was holding on to it thinking I'd throw it into his mouth when I got up there and say, "Have some gun, bitch," or something, I don't know. "There has to be something we can do." Kenjin grabbed the Sword of Ages. "Reverse," she yelled. "Undo." "Nah," said the warrior calmly. "I think this is it. I did what I was supposed to do. You take that. Hold on to it. I can't think of a better person to protect the realm. Is it gonna turn me into a badass warrior? Asked Kenjin, not crying on the outside, but wrecked on the inside. No, you already are one. With that, the stone finally closed in over the face of Swordborne the Savage. Once nothing more than a good-hearted shoemaker, he had become the greatest champion that Stone's realm would ever know. A warrior, now immortalized in stone, forever sitting on the throne of his greatest foe. Ghost Bitch nudged Kenjin's hand. It was time for her to go too. Kenjin patted her side. The bear gave one last grunt towards Screambird, then turned and disappeared as she walked away. Kenjin wasted no time gathering herself and moving on. That's what she'd always done, and besides, she had a job to do. The spirit stones needed protection. That protection was her. Kenjin Falconer raised the Sword of Ages high above her head, and with a voice clear and true, a voice that echoed across Stone's realm, declared, "Unite!" In that instance, the spirit stones rejoined the Sword of Ages. Kenjin was now the lone keeper of the spirit stones and guardian of Stone's realm. She and Screambird went on to have many incredible and kick-ass adventures. Their adventures you won't hear from me, because it's also time for me to leave Stone's realm. It's been an honor to journey with you across this land, good listeners. Farewell, and may the Creatrix grant you fortune on your life's paths. Oh, shit. I forgot one last thing. Epilogue. Swordborne once again awoke inside the Sword of Ages, back in front of the roaring fire, sitting across from Keith, the really solid dude. Ghost Bitch was curled up at his feet. Don't tell me I'm not really dead again, Swordborne said, punching his hand through the top of the goat wine cask already next to his chair and delicately slipping in a long straw. Nah, replied Keith, you're for sure really dead. You were right, it was time. However, you're not ready to join us here in the Swordscape just yet. Shit, growled Swordborne. You're needed somewhere else, man. In this one place where being alive is kind of a deal breaker. Have you ever heard of the Ghost Realm? Shit, Swordborne growled once again. Suddenly a loud noise emanated from outside the house. Swordborne looked out the window to see a spectral locomotive slowing to a halt outside. As it stopped, it let out a hiss of ghostly steam. What the fuck, is that a metal caterpillar? You're about to see a lot of new stuff, said Keith. You ready? Nope, replied Swordborne. He immediately pounded the entire barrel of goat wine, then wiped his mouth on his arm. Okay, now I am. Swordborne and Ghost Bitch headed out the door towards the train, towards the Ghost Realm. The